talked about how, in most first-generation Jewish families at that point, there was this big push toward education and college, but your father didn't, he wanted you not even to finish high school.
No, oh no. At a certain point when I started high school, he felt it was time enough. There was no more reason for educating me. See, the thing is, if there was a boy in the family, the whole thing would have been that the boy must go to yeshiva, and the boy would be this treasured item, which is not the girls. The girls doesn't matter. They have to learn a trade. The earlier they learn their trade to make money, to bring into the house, that was, and then somewhere they would get married and have children. That would be it.
Mm-hmm. And did your father, because he had 3 girls, that he felt somehow, I don't know,
cheated,
put upon or cursed,
cheated,
or
cheated,
or
yeah. God actually punished him by giving him 3 girls.
Did he ever say that out loud?
Oh yes, yeah. It was Gstaad haben. No, what was it? If I can remember, it's been so long. Something about, children. It's about children dürfen haben, Steine dürfen haben. You're better to have stones than to have children.
You're better to have
stones than to have children. So I always knew somewhere that I was an artist. I asked my father to draw a picture for me, and he drew a stick figure. And then I drew a little princess with a crown on her. And when I took a look at what my father drew and I drew, I was absolutely elated. I was an artist, and I was better than him.
You knew it.
5 years old, and I knew it.
What did he think about that?
He just laughed.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It was a joke.
Yeah.
All I wanted when I was a young one, I was 7, 8, I wanted to live in a nunnery, in a convent. Desperate. I wanted to be a nun. Desperate. I wanted to wear the habit. I wanted no one should be able to see my face, really, because they would wear these big things. And that nobody would bother me the way my parents would bother me with the Hebrew and the this and the that, whatever it is. I didn't even know that Jesus was hanging on the wall. I just knew that I had never even been in a church. But I knew about it. I knew about churches, and I knew about convents, and I knew about the nuns would come through the neighborhood and they would ask for money. But I loved them, and I wanted to be one desperately.
But you think because you knew they had sort of solitude and
I knew that nobody bothered them. As long as you're wearing something like this and something like this, who's going to bother you?
Right.
I used to work for him in his fur shop.
Right. Oh, I forgot that.
Yeah, and that was not kind. He'd have the people who wanted to, these called clients, whatever they were, what they order fur coats. A lot of fur coats. It wasn't women that walked in for men. And they would they always wanted to feel the lapels so they could feel me up. Mm-hmm. And it was so disgusting and awful. And when I told my father, he said, "Don't be ridiculous, you're just imagining it." Mm-hmm. And then it was my mother that put a stop to it. You can't make her go again, you can't make her go.
Really?
Yeah. As I was 16, my mother would say, "How are you going to catch a husband if you don't wear lipstick?" I mean, that was all part of the speech. Right. And I refused to wear lipstick, and I refused to wear frou-frou or any kind of dresses in that way. I refused to wear red, I refused to wear pink, I refused to do this, and I was mostly wearing black and brown anyways. So that I didn't know why, it's just that I couldn't bear it. And as long as I couldn't bear it, I wasn't going to do it. You couldn't make me do something I couldn't bear. I hated my hair long, although I had grown my hair very long because I knew I could just take the whole thing and just knot it up in the back of my head, and that was simple.
At one point you had
I had very long hair.
Very long hair.
Or I'd put it into one long braid in the back. Yeah. I mean, it was simplistic on my part what I was doing because that's what I knew I was comfortable doing. It never occurred to me that I was a feminist, and therefore, I didn't want to dress myself up to make myself beautiful for somebody out there. It just, I don't know. I just know it was a natural thing. That's who I was, and I wasn't about to change it. And wanted to be in school. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be with other artists. That's as far as I would go. I mean, there was like, you have a fence around you, and I didn't want to go past that fence. And that's where I felt most secure, and that's what I wanted desperately all of my life. At the time I was not able to go to music and art high school. From that rejection on, right. I always felt I never fit and nobody would let me in. So here I was in Chicago and I was let in. The thing is that I had never really been in a real art school because the first school that I went to was graphic. Mm-hmm. And this was real artists, and I was an artist at that time. And I knew I was an artist because at one point they were selling blue work shirts, and I bought my first real blue work shirt to wear. Would never wear it outside. It was just too exciting for me to just be in that place, frightening, but extremely exciting, and something that was overwhelming because it was something I, in my lifetime, never expected to be in the middle of a professional, real art school. I was trying to tend to a household and trying to fit everything else in, so I got up at 5 in the morning to do the household chores and to get the kids ready to do the chores that had to be done during the day. There was a big list on the refrigerator of who did what. And
how old were your kids when you were in Chicago?
In Chicago. God, they were not that old at all. I had just had my youngest one, so he must have been he was about 5.
Your youngest was 5?
My youngest was 5. I think he started kindergarten, he started school. And that's what enabled me then to feel that I could handle all this, because it meant that they were all provided for during the day.
Right. And
when I didn't do the day classes, I would do night classes. By the time Gideon would be home for the night classes. I mean, I had it all programmed. I don't remember, but I remember the refrigerator was always full of lists for everyone, what they had to do and who did the laundry and who did this and who had to bring in the shopping and stuff like that.
Right.
So that was my life in Chicago. Everyone said, go west, California. It was a wonderful thing for me to be able to do.
Right.
And then the minute I got there, I hated California. I hated San Diego. I hated all that sunshine. I hated all that. You couldn't go in to enjoy a cup of coffee because it was never cold out there. And I realized coffee and cold go together. It was just a whole different way of living. You went into a store or someplace, a restaurant, and always a young, pretty girl would say, "Hello, my name is Betty. How will I serve you today?" This was a mentality I've never seen in my life. The first few times it happened, I was always sitting with my mouth open. Who are these people? They're all so happy.
How did you find your studio? I mean, it was like a former kind of a grocery
Chinese.
store, right?
It was a Chinese supermarket.
Right.
Chinese market. It wasn't a supermarket. It was a Chinese market in the downtown area of San Diego, and everything was close to the water there, but it was a great, great place. No, I knew I wanted out of the house or near the house. I didn't want to be part of the household because the kids knew too easily where I was and could find me, and I really didn't want that. Gideon could find me too easily, and I didn't want that. I wanted a place reasonably far away, like 15 minutes away, that's all it was. But, by car, it was very close, but not close enough where the kids can sort of move in and out. Mom, home from school, blah, blah,
It was more about privacy than about...
It was more about just being an artist. And I knew anyone that does writing or painting or anything of that kind, you need a space of your own. What was that, a room of one's own?
Right.
I didn't know shit about anything. I was doing them. I mean, everything came to me. Did I know when I was doing any of that stuff? I never knew. It's just that I did it. It had to do with my gut feeling or something that was in the air that interested me. didn't have a clue. I then became very formalized and understood how the art world worked, what other people were doing. That didn't come for a long, long time. Yeah, it was funny because I remember it was Mimi and Judy Chicago. They came to the studio together, and they said to me, "Ida, that's so depressing. I can't bear to look at them." I kept connecting them to the concentration camps.
Oh,
It never occurred to me.
that wasn't in your thinking.
Well, my thinking is full of concentration camps and what my family went through.
Right.
But, when I was doing those, look, I don't know. It's like, what did it mean? What does it mean? What happened? It's really hard. I don't know. I rely on my gut. And when I go from one thing to the other, it just opens it up and opens it up and opens it up.
Right.
And and that's what I end up with. But then at a certain point, I knew there's no way I can stay here. So I did my best to get out of there.
And how difficult was that? What were your discussions with your family? How was that a tough break?
It was very hard. It was a fait accompli as far as I was concerned. It wasn't fair for them, but there was no way I could stay there. I needed to go to New York. I remember I was born in New York. I was a New Yorker. I was an artist. That was the place for me to be.
Right.
So there was no question about it.
When you were writing those red books, did you think of them as more akin to poetry, or did you think, this is prose and these are words that I think I want to end up in the work?
Never. It was out of desperation. I didn't really get to talk. I was not someone that had close friends. I didn't socialize out there. When I started to socialize and have friends in that way, it was when I joined Heresies, the feminist movement.
Right.
And that was, for me, marvelous because I was comfortable and I was happy there. But when I was doing the books, it was because I didn't talk to anybody. And this way, all the crazy thoughts and everything, I can just go, next page,
Right.
It just rolled out of me, and it was wonderful. And then I would, if I read something I really liked, I would take it out of context and put it in the book. Or on the train, it was wonderful because I had a long trip. I used to go to Brighton Beach.
And remind me, this was your mother?
This was in New York City.
In Brighton Beach?
The D train was to take me out to Brighton Beach from New York City.
Right.
And it was a long trip. And I was always writing. That's what kept me from going crazy. I would just keep writing. It was almost like Rorschach, in my own head. I had the Rorschach out of my own head rather than seeing the images. It was, just right. You go on the next page and you continue from there. Then you can continue with a scenario that's interesting to you, or it might be, or part of a play, and you make up something very foolish or crazy or off the wall. And it just kept me going, something I really like doing. This is found material, and this is about it was a book that was published, and it had to do with schizophrenic patients. And these are quotes from the schizophrenic patients. And what is your name, little man? How old are you? One day. I drive through my brain in 4 hours and 19 years. My mind sometimes goes away. I keep a record of my seminal emissions. I become pregnant by a bus stop. Galileo has made me pregnant again. I see by your fingernails that you are my brother. He blows his nose, I blow mine. Who is right, I or he? Waiter, a glass of water. Half of my body is already gone. My husband, this is pure truth. I don't speak because I don't know anyone. There is a war going on. I have a telephone in my feet. I will get rid of my hearing. I will hear I am God. The blanket smells so bad. I am in a confusion institution. Live without liver. Why are you speaking into me? I am differently developed. You are mentally ill. Yes, it is so. My object is in your cleansing. I love you. I hate you. My object is to establish women's rights. Are you human? I am human, you pig. Now then, shall I get well again? Not according to the plan. I only want to help you. You are not mentally ill. For God's sakes, you memorize everything I say. No, in the middle of my head.
And I think I'd asked you this before, but when you were starting to make the books and mail out the books, I don't think I'd ever, we never explored this fully, but like, how did you decide who you wanted to make a mailing list? Or like, how did the mailing list come together?
That was very easy. I knew so few people in New York that what I did was there are a lot of artists, I love their work. And I put them on my list. A lot of writers, I like their work, I put them on my list. And so once I started to send them out, then people would ask me, would you put so-and-so on the list? They saw the book and they want to be on the mailing list also. And it grew, and it grew, and it grew, until it was finally at my maximum of 500 people on that list.
It came up to 500.
That's correct, yes.
Wow. And I think you told me at some point you just take a cart of these like down to the
In my shopping cart.
down to
Canal Street Post Office.
And mail them in bulk.
That's correct.
Right.
It cost me very, very little. They were little. A lot of people have saved them still in those little brown envelopes that I sent them. An envelope about yay big. So small.
Right. And do you remember, I think you'd said, there were some responses that said, don't ever send me this again or whatever, but
Correct.
was the overwhelming response was probably...
It's very positive. Look,
Yeah.
we're artists. As a matter of fact, a lot of them started sending me some of their artwork that they were doing as mailing pieces.
Right.
So suddenly I was on the list of other people doing similar, not books, but similar works.
Right.
And that was very enjoyable. I really liked that a lot.
And at that point, you weren't represented by a gallery.
No.
I mean, this was the way
Correct.
that you conceived to get your work out into the world.
That's correct, yes. It was the women's movement. And at that time, Heresies had just started up. That was the Women on Art and Politics. And it was Lucy Lepard and Miriam Shapiro and Joan Braderman, Joyce Kozlov, I can't remember all the names, Pat Stair, Joan Snyder. So it was a large sort of group of women, and they were just starting the first issue. And they asked me if I wanted to be on the first issue. And I couldn't, it was better than MacArthur. It was very important to me. And feminism has been very important to me.
With Feldman, when did you begin to feel like, how long was it that it took for you to begin to feel like you were, not just making a living as an artist, but, becoming known?
I'd say in the 90s.
That long? Really? Even though you had some pieces in museums starting in the 70s?
Yeah, it didn't matter.
It took that long for you to feel like
Look,
you were
remember, I
a
was
working
I was a girl.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But for the most part, we were still counting from museum shows how many girls are there. And it was a reality. It was only when the feminist movement started to move up, and suddenly the museums were very pressured to make sure that there were women in the shows also. Mm-hmm. And it became somewhat better. It did. Mm-hmm. I felt it was much better.
how was just your financial situation in
It
those years?
it was very, very low. But my financial situation had always been low. I came out of low and I stayed in low. So it was not something, my expectations in terms of making money had nothing to do with my art. They were two separate things.
Right. And when you won the MacArthur, was that sort of, but like financially and otherwise, was that an important thing for you in terms of visibility and?
The MacArthur, I don't think the MacArthur really, I mean, I think it's just for the inner circle that people appreciate you. But I don't think, goes out and makes headlines like a Hollywood star gets an Academy Award or anything like that. And for me, I remember when they called MacArthur, because Ron would always play these jokes on me. I can't even remember, but they were funny jokes. He thought they were funny. I thought they were terrible. And I would holler.
Like practical jokes.
Practical jokes, yeah. Absolutely. He loved practical jokes. I hated practical jokes. He calls me and he says, about MacArthur, blah, blah, blah. And I'm listening. And I said, look, Ron, this is not funny. Oh, no, tell Ron this is not funny. I don't want to hear it. It's just not funny. And he said, look, why don't I give you the number of the MacArthur Foundation? And this is my name, and why don't you call me back there? And you'll find out if it's real or not. And at that point, I felt very foolish, because obviously it was real. And that's how I received my MacArthur.